Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of Spooks Files. Have you ever had an imaginary friend? I direct this question to you, Mr. Hater. What do you think? Have you ever had an imaginary friend?
I have not, because I'm not a child.
Oh, and you never were a child?
Nope, never.
Oh.
I was born a 37-year-old man.
I have an imaginary friend. Well, I have an imaginary friend, and
Nerd.
he's on the podcast with me today.
But just me and you.
I never had an imaginary friend to the point. I don't know. I feel like most kids who have an imaginary friend I would hope they know that they don't actually have an imaginary friend. But I also know that from what I know about it, in early kids, maybe it's almost like a weird phenomenon. But surprisingly, I don't know what you think about it. The things I've looked into it have made it seem like it's a normal, healthy thing, and that
it's supposedly really beneficial.
Apparently, it's even a sign of strong social skills, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, it's pretty ironic, but whatever.
Maybe, I guess I get more practice.
Yeah, I guess.
But, Mr. Hater, not all imaginary friends are created equal. Because when you look at me, and you look at me, Mr. Hater, you can see that that's clearly not the case.
Are you referencing something, or what?
Now, listen.
Look, it's your podcast. Do whatever you want. I just make sure.
I'm a genetic freak, and I'm not normal. So, with that being established, we're going to get into this story about imaginary friends, or maybe not so imaginary friends. This story is called Mr. Widemouth. I'm going to just make a guess. I haven't even asked you. I'm assuming you haven't heard of this story before.
I have not.
You have any predictions or perceptions from just the name and what we've talked about? What
was the name again? Mr. Widemouth?
Yes.
Something tells me he's swallowing children whole, but I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
That's terrifying. Actually, that thought just like. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's get right into the story. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's get into it.
Let's get. During my childhood, my family was like a drop of water in a vast river, never remaining in one location for long. We settled in Rhode Island when I was 8, and there we remained until I went to college in Colorado Springs. Most of my memories are rooted in Rhode Island, but there are fragments in the attic of my brain which belong to the various homes we had lived in when I was much younger. Most of these memories are unclear and pointless, chasing after another boy in the backyard of a house in North Carolina, trying to build a raft to float on the creek behind the apartment we rented in Pennsylvania, and so on. But there is one set of memories which remains as clear as glass, as though they were just made yesterday. I often wonder whether these memories are simply lucid dreams produced by the long sickness I experienced that spring. But in my heart, I know they are real. Not gonna pause too much here, but I just want to say, I love that opening just because it's like, it feels like we're talking about, like, it's such a, like, real story.
Yeah.
That, like, you're kind of brought into it. We were living in a house just outside the bustling metropolis of New Vineyard, Maine, population 643.
Wow.
It was a large structure, especially for a family of 3. Yeah, that's the graduating class of Weatherford High School.
Reference.
There were a number of rooms that I didn't see in the 5 months we resided there. In some ways, it was a waste of time, but it was the only house on the market at the time, at least within an hour's commute to my father's place of work. The day after my 5th birthday, so this kid's young, attended by my parents alone, I came down with a fever. The doctor said I had mononucleosis, which meant no rough play, and more fever for at least another 3 weeks. It was horrible timing to be bedridden, We were in the process of packing our things to move to Pennsylvania, and most of my things were already packed away in boxes, leaving my room barren. My mother brought me ginger ale and books several times a day. Ginger ale, that's nostalgia right there. That whenever I was sick, my dad would give me ginger ale.
That's a blast from the past, brother.
And these served the function of being my primary form of entertainment for the next few weeks. Boredom always loomed just around the corner, waiting to rear its ugly head and compound my misery. I don't exactly recall how I met Mr. Widemouth. I think it was about a week after I was diagnosed with mono. My first memory of the small creature was asking him if he had a name. He told me to call him Mr. Widemouth, because his mouth was large. In fact,
Fair.
that's. Can you imagine? Just like, call me Mr. Big Nose. It's like, what?
Why?
Okay.
You got a big nose.
So you just tell me your name, like.
No, call me Mr. Big Nose. Like,
So-
or tell me your name.
I guess at least he's self-aware, right?
Yeah.
In fact, everything about him was large in comparison to his body. His head, his eyes, his crooked ears, but his mouth was by far the largest.
Was it big?
He seems like he's probably too small to swallow someone whole, like you're mentioning.
Well,
You mentioned.
That's impressive.
Oh crap! Sorry, I had an ad just cover the entire. What is going on? What? Okay, that was weird. All right, back in the story. You look kind of like a Furby, I said as he flipped through one of my books. I probably need to do a better kid. You look kind of like a Furby, I said as he flipped through one of my books. Mr. Widemouth stopped and gave me a puzzled look. Furby? What's a Furby? He asked. I shrugged. You know, the toy, the little robot with the big ears. You can pet and feed them almost like a real pet. Oh, Mr. Widemouth resumed his activity. You don't need one of those. They aren't the same as having a real friend.
The irony.
I remember. Do you think that voice is good or?
Yeah. I mean,
I think it's. Is that what you imagined?
No, it is now. That's what I imagine now.
I remember Mr. Widemouth disappearing every time my mother stopped by to check in on me. I lay under your bed, he explained later. I don't want your parents to see me because I'm afraid they won't let us play anymore. We didn't do much during those first few days.
That's right.
Mr. Widemouth just looked at my books, fascinated by the stories and pictures they contained. The third or fourth morning after I met him, he greeted me with a large smile on his face. Now you can look at that picture from the Google Doc if you want a description of what that looks like.
Nice film.
I have a new game we can play, he said. We have to wait until your mother comes to check on you, because she can't see us play it. It's a secret game. After my mother delivered more books and soda at the usual time, Mr. Widemouth slipped out. He's probably getting loopy from all that sugar. That's what he's imagining. Mr. Widemouth slipped out from under the bed and took my hand. We have to go to the room at the end of this hallway, he said. I objected at first, as my parents had forbidden me to leave my bed without their permission. But Mr. Widemouth persisted until I gave in. The room in question had no furniture or wallpaper. Its only distinguishing feature was a window outside the doorway. Mr. Widemouth darted across the room and gave the window a firm push, flinging it open. I don't know why the thought of the little creature starting quickly across the room was actually pretty creepy. He then beckoned me to look out the ground below. We were on the second story of the house, but it was on a hill. And from this angle, the drop was farther than 2 stories due to the incline. I like to play pretend up here, Mr. Widemouth explained. I pretend that there is a big, soft trampoline below this window, and I jump.
Oh my gosh.
If you pretend hard enough, you bounce back up like a feather. I want you to try.
doing, kid.
I was a 5-year-old with a fever, so only a hint of skepticism darted through my thoughts. I looked down and considered the possibility. It's a long drop, I said. So I'm going to pause here, and this is something I think even you'll agree. Kids are stupid.
Yeah.
I can imagine this kid being like, well,
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I didn't think Furbies were real, so I guess I'll take a jump.
Yeah, 100%. I could get my cousins to do this, and they're like 12. And they would do it for fun. So, yeah, this kid being deceived, I'd be out easily.
Yeah. Right. So it's a long drop, I said. But that's all a part of the fun. It wouldn't be as fun if there was only a short drop. If it were that way, you might as well just bounce on a real trampoline. I toyed with the idea, picturing myself falling through thin air only to bounce back to the window on something unseen by human eyes. But the realist in me prevailed. Maybe some other time, I said. I don't know if I have enough imagination. I could get hurt. Mr. Widemouth's face contorted into a snarl, but only for a moment. Anger gave way to disappointment. If you say so, he said. He spent the rest of the day under my bed, quiet as a mouse. He's just butthurt. He didn't kill himself.
Oh, you're a stupid kid. Had a plan.
The following morning, Mr. Widemouth arrived holding a small box. I wanted to teach you how to jungle, he said. Here are some things you can use to practice before I start giving you lessons. I looked in the box. It was full of knives. My parents will kill me, I shouted, horrified that Mr. Widemouth had brought knives into my room, objects that my parents would never allow me to touch. I'll be spanked and grounded for a year. Mr. Widemouth frowned. It's fun to juggle with these. I want you to try it. I pushed the box away. I can't. I'll get in trouble. Knives aren't safe to just throw in the air. Mr. Widemouth said, oh wait, what?
Oh, my bad.
My bad.
My bad, sorry.
I didn't think about it. Mr. Widemouth's frown deepened into a scowl. He took the box of knives and slid under my bed, remaining there the rest of the
He
day.
is very butthurt.
I began to wonder how often he was under me. Honestly, him taking the box of knives is kind of worrying that he still has them.
Yeah.
They've made him seem small enough, and he hasn't tried anything that I wonder, like, if the kid, like, could just physically, like, beat him up. Like, he's just a small creature, but he's just trying to be manipulative.
Yeah.
I started having trouble sleeping after that. Mr. Widemouth often woke me up at night, saying he's put a real trampoline under the window. A big one that I couldn't see in the dark. I always declined. I was trying to laugh. I heard you laughing. I was like, okay. I always declined and tried to go back to sleep, but Mr. Widemouth persisted. Sometimes he stayed by my side until early morning, encouraging me to jump. That's why he's like, hey, look, if you go down there, trust me, I put a real trampoline down there. I know I'm only 2 inches tall, but it was pretty easy. He's like,
okay. Just does it.
Just jump. Jump! He wasn't so fun to play with anymore. My mother came to me one morning and told me I had her permission to walk outside. She thought the fresh air would be good for me, especially after being confined to my room for so long. Ecstatic, I put on my sneakers and trotted out to the back porch, yearning for the feeling of sun on my face. Mr. Widemouth was waiting for me. I have something I want you to see, he said. I must have given a weird look because he then said, It's safe, I promise. I followed him to the beginning of the deer trail, which ran through the woods behind the house. This is an important path, he explained. I've had a lot of friends about your age. Oh. When they were ready, I took them down this path to a special place. You aren't ready yet, but one day I hope to take you there. I returned to the house, wondering what kind of place lay beyond that trail. 2 weeks after I met Mr. Widemouth, the last load of our things had been packed into a moving truck. I would be in the cab of that truck, sitting next to my father for the long drive to Pennsylvania. I considered telling Mr. Widemouth that I would be leaving, but even at 5 years old, I was beginning to suspect that perhaps the creature's intentions were not to my benefit, despite what he said otherwise. For this reason, I decided to keep my departure a secret. My father and I were in the truck at 4 a.m. He was going to make it to Pennsylvania by lunchtime with the help of an endless supply of coffee and a 6-pack of energy drinks. He seemed more like a man who was about to run a marathon rather than the one who was about to spend 2 days sitting still. "Early enough for you?" he asked. I nodded and placed my head against the window, hoping for some sleep before the sun came up. I felt my father's hand on my shoulder. "This is our last move, son, I promise. I know it's hard for you, as sick as you've been. Once Daddy gets promoted, we can settle down and you can make friends." "I already got a friend. His name's Mr. Widemouth. He's trying to kill me." I opened my eyes as we backed up the driveway. I saw Mr. Widemouth's silhouette in my bedroom window. He stood motionless until the truck was about to turn on the main road. He gave a pitiful little wave goodbye, steak knife in hand. I didn't wave back.
Oh, that's just rude.
He's like, it's so weird because it's like, he's trying to kill him, but like it's like, oh, he's sad. He didn't get to kill the little kid. It's very animated. Years later, I returned to New Vineyard. The piece of land our house stood upon was empty except for the foundation, as the house burned down a few years after my family left. Out of curiosity, I followed the deer trail that Mr. Widemouth had shown me. Part of me expected him to jump out from behind the tree and scare the living bejesus out of me, but I felt that Mr. Widemouth was gone, somehow tied to the house that no longer existed. The trail ended at New Vineyard Memorial Cemetery. I noticed that many of the tombstones belonged to children.
Oh, that's nice.
I'm sure you picked it up, but just to make sure, you remember how he led him down the trail and he was like, "I want to hope that you can come down here someday."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
You get that? Yeah, that was the cemetery.
Like, I'm hoping to murder you one day.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I guess
That one was
before I
weird.
say my thoughts, I'm curious about you. Go ahead and say whatever you have.
I would say, like, yeah, that one was a weird one. Like, I guess maybe just it was written in such a way that I wasn't supposed to. I took a lot of it as comedic, and so because of that, like, it wasn't as scary. At times, I think it was supposed to, because to me it just sounded so funny to think about this, like, imaginary friend arguing with the kid trying to kill him, and the kid's like, "No." Yeah. But I definitely think it.
I think
it was well written.
I'm sorry,
Well,
go
I don't
ahead.
think it was good as the last one, but as far as written and like and my enjoyment of it, I guess you would say. Well, I'd definitely say this was one of the best ones we've done for sure. And it was very interesting. It definitely just seems like that kid had a fever dream, like, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of like the feeling it almost has to it. Like it kind of almost hints towards, like, is this kid just making this up, which is probably where some of it comes from, obviously. But like, it's like, is he just making this up because he's has a fever and he's seeing weird crap, or is there actually, like, a demon?
Yeah, well, so I think the implication is sort of like you're kind of led to believe that until he comes back and then you see what's at the end of the trail. And so it's this weird thing why I love this story so much. It's one of my favorites because it's yeah, and a part of me doing the funny voice might not have helped, but it is a little comedic. But it's also like, I think what's really scary about it is that this kid, if he was just a little bit more susceptible or a little bit more, enthusiastic, like you could totally see him falling for some of this. And despite it being like sort of funny in some parts, like I feel like the glee and what this little creature is trying to do, it's just there is an unnerving feeling about it. And ultimately, what really sticks the landing for me is it just feels, strangely enough, it feels more realistic than most stories where it's like I think the author just does a really good job of putting you in that perspective, and then giving you pretty much have like every out. Like he's a little kid, he's sick, so it might be like an imaginary friend. He's also like not really. He's gonna, and so you're just kind of like, it leaves that in like, wait, well, what if? Because like, I don't know. I think that, like I said, I really like this story. It's not one that really, it's not terrifying, but it's like, it's that good balance of like creepy, like kind of gets you thinking about it. Like, I will say, I am surprised again, considering how well the last story went. I did not expect to think that the lake would be the best story we've read so far, but I think you mentioned, and I'd say, I'm not sure where I stand on him, but Mr. Widemouth is definitely one of the better early creepypastas for me. So, yeah, that's pretty much, I don't have a whole lot of more comments about it, and I think it's pretty to the point.
Yeah,
do you have any final thoughts?
Get that kid some stinking Tylenol.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
Like
stop
she
looping
brought
them up
her.
with
She kept
ginger ale.
like she was like bringing him soda and crap, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe some Tylenol, maybe some NyQuil. I don't,
More ginger ale. More ginger ale. Jump off and jump. There's a trampoline down there. Don't trust me. All right. Well, I hope you don't mind, but I'm gonna have to wrap this up because I have a meeting with my buddy, Little Big Nose. He told me that he has something fun for me playing down in the trap door in the basement. So I'm gonna go check that out. But
this is
you
why
guys
you'll
have a good
never
night.
have a girlfriend.
And I'm cutting that out.